One time there was a man named Drye Frye. He was a preacher, but he didn't preach for much except having the collection after revivals and for having all the fried chicken he could eat. Well, one day he was at this man's house and he was eating some of this fried chicken just as fast as he could, one piece right after another. Oh, and he got choked. A bone got caught in his throat, and he died right there on the spot. "Oh, law," said the man of the house. "Old Drye Frye's done choked to death. I've got to do something with this body. Folks are going to hang me for sure if they think I killed him." And so he picked up old Drye Frye, walked down the road and to a neighbor's house, put him in front of the door and set him up there, and then walked on back home. Later on, the folks that lived there come out. They were going to go to do something, and when they opened the door, old Drye Frye just rolled back in the house. "Oh, no! It's old Drye Frye." Everybody knew old Drye Frye. "And he's dead. Folks are going to think we killed him. They'll hang us for sure. We got to do something with this body." And so they took him across the road and hid him in the bushes, set him up there, and then they went on to whatever it was they'd planned to do anyway. Well, later on that evening, these young men had been out just having a good old time, laughing and talking and singing and telling jokes, and they were on their way back home. And when they passed those bushes where Drye Frye was, one of them looked over there, and he didn't know it was old Drye Frye. He thought it was a highwayman who was fixing to rob him. And so he pointed to his friends to look over there, and they reached down and they got rocks and they started hurling them at old Drye Frye, and every time one would hit him, he'd fall down a little bit more till he was just lying on the ground. They ran over there. "Oh, no, it's old Drye Frye." Everybody knew old Drye Frye. "We've done stoned old Drye Frye. We got to do something with this body or folks will hang us for sure." And so they picked up old Drye Frye and they took him down the road and came to a farmhouse, and they set old Drye Frye up in front of the corn crib. Well, next morning, the farmer that lived there, he came out and he looked out over his farm, stretched a little bit. He saw old Drye Frye sitting by his corn crib, except he didn't know it was old Drye Frye. He thought it was somebody that had been stealing his corn. So he ran back into the house, got his shotgun, came out. "Get away from there or I'll shoot." Old Drye Frye, of course, just sits there, and he shoots, bam. And old Drye Frye falls over. He ran up to the corn crib. "Oh, Law, it's old Drye Frye. I've done shot old Drye Frye." Everybody knew old Drye Frye. "Folks are going to hang me for sure. I got to do something with that body." But right then, he didn't have time. He just put old Drye Frye into the corn crib and went on and did his work. Later that night, later that afternoon, he got up and he picked up old Drye Frye out of there, took him down to the river where there was going to be a baptizing the next day. And he set old Drye Frye in front of this stump that was right there on the bank of the river where there was going to be the baptizing. And it was right by the deepest part. And so he bent old Drye Frye's legs, put his elbows on there and his chin in the hands, and he skedaddled on back home. Well, next morning, this little boy came early to the baptizing. He was afraid if he stayed home too long, his mama'd find something for him to do. So he came down there and he saw old Drye Frye sitting over there. "Howdy, Mr. Frye." Old Drye Frye didn't say anything, of course. And he said, "He's getting old, I'll talk louder." I said, "Howdy, Mr. Frye." Mr. Frye, old Drye Frye, still just sat there. Now, he was a feisty little fella, and so he looked at old Drye Frye and came up and he said, "If you don't say howdy to me, I'm going to knock your elbows off your knees." Now, Drye Frye ain't got to say howdy to nobody. He's deader'n a doornail. After all, he's done choked to death. He's been stoned. He's been shot. Drye Frye ain't saying howdy to nobody. So, that little boy, I told you he was feisty. He took his fist and hit Drye Frye's elbow, and Drye Frye tumbled head over heels down that bank into the river right at the deepest part and sunk right down there. "Oh, Law, I've done drowned it, old Drye Frye. Folks are gonna hang me for sure. I gotta do something with that body." But he didn't have time because people started coming for the baptizing right then. And they came and they stood around and they wondered where old Drye Frye was. And one man said he hadn't seen him since supper last week, and another one said he hadn't seen him since the meeting on Sunday. And so finally they figured, well, old Drye Frye ain't gonna come. So they sang a couple of hymns and they passed the hat, and then they said a prayer and went home. The little boy went home too. But later that night, he snuck out of the house and he had with him a cane pole and a burlap bag. And he came and he went down to where they Drye Frye had fallen into the river, and he took his pole and he swung it around until he snagged old Drye Frye, and he pulled him up on the bank and put him in that sack. Well, he threw that sack over his shoulder and started walking home. "Well, I don't know what I'm gonna do with this body. Gotta find some place to hide it." And as he was walking along, coming the other way were these two old rogues that had been out killing hogs. And they had them in burlap bags. So they saw the little boy because they were up higher, and they were afraid he'd see them. So they left their bags right there and ran into the bushes to hide. And the little boy came up there, and he put Drye Frye down, and he looked into these burlap bags and saw the hogs. And he picked up one of the hogs that they'd stolen, left old Drye Frye there, and started walking on home. Whew. Those men came out of the bushes. Oh, they were glad that little boy hadn't seen him. And they picked up the bags and they went home. went directly to the smokehouse and hung up the bags in there. The next morning, they went up to bed, and the next morning the woman of the house came down, and she had a great big butcher knife. She was going to the smokehouse and cut some meat to fry for breakfast. Well, she went in there and she slid open that sack. Rah! She went running out of there, knocked the wall down from one side of the smokehouse, one post from the porch, screaming the whole time as loud as she could. She went into the house, still just screaming, yanked the screen door off its hinges. And the men came down in their shirt tails, just a-flapping. And she couldn't tell them what happened. She kept telling them to go back to the, pointing at the smokehouse. And they went out there, and they saw old Drye Frye hanging there. Oh, Lord, it's old Drye Frye. Folks are going to think we killed him, and they'll hang us for sure. We got to do something with this body. Well, now, up over the mountain there, from their place, was a herd of wild horses. So they went up there, and they brought one back. Put it in the barn, and one of them went to get old Drye Frye. And they got old Drye Frye, they put him up on the horse, and they tied his feet under the horse's belly, tied his hands to the mane, put his hat on his head, opened the barn door, and out that horse shot across the field. Old Drye Frye just a-bouncing along. Help, help! They ran out with and shot their guns up in the air. Horse thief, help, help! All the neighbors came. That horse jumped the fence, headed up the mountain, and Drye Frye still just bouncing along. And you know what? Nobody has ever seen that horse or old Drye Frye ever again. And if they had, we'd know it, because after all, everybody knew old Drye Frye.